Good morning, Scoop Nation. You are listening to the Morning Scoop for Wednesday, October 19th. Joining me today is going to be Nevadabuck, and on the docket today, we will be covering a few topics that have been top of mind on the Ask the Insiders board at BuckeyeScoop.com. If you're not a member, definitely go check that out and sign up today so that you can kind of keep up with the community and the conversation happening around these topics and a ton of other topics that aren't going to be available here on this podcast. But take a minute as well, like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel so that you can stay up to date on all of the additional content as soon as it's released, both on the YouTube page as well as on the podcast itself. And like I said, be sure to check out BuckeyeScoop.com for more insight outside of what we will talk about today with Nevada. But without further ado, Nevada, welcome to the podcast again, brother. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. So, I hate bye weeks. I guess I hate them because, but what an unbelievable weekend for sports. Oh my goodness. It was just everything from, unreal baseball playoff games to classic football games to even a great UFC card. And it was just, sports on top of sports on top of sports. And I had the player. I went to Green Bay, Wisconsin this weekend, which I heartily recommend for anybody who's a fan of football anywhere, regardless of whether you're a Packer fan, a visiting fan, or whatever. You got to take a trip to Lambeau. It's really unlike any other place that you would ever go to. There'll never be another sports franchise quite like it, and that was a lot of fun. But now I'm ready to get back and talking Ohio State football and get ready for Iowa.
Yeah, it's funny. I think every person that I've talked to in the past week or 10 days, maybe, let's say, that's been the first thing that everybody has said is, I hate bye weeks. So it's a running theme with any team, I guess, just having the bye week and not being able to watch them. But I definitely agree. I mean, the weekend itself, with what was available, the games that were available, the top 10 matchups in college football that, all came down almost to single possessions, was incredible to watch, and definitely one that I think is, could go down at least this year as probably the most exciting and the biggest weekend, maybe outside of, your rivalry week or, the championship week as well. But yeah, I've always wanted to go up to Lambeau as well. I have a buddy of mine that's a Green Bay Packer fan, grew up kind of around that area. So maybe someday I'll get up there and get one. I think this is probably about the last time of the year that I would want to go, though. I imagine it's going to start to get a little bit frigid.
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely, you don't want to go too late because otherwise it's going to be really cold. But it was just cold enough to be perfect, and it's football weather. Second half of the college football season's upon us, and this is an exciting time.
Yeah, every time I go outside, I'm like, oh, this is it. This is perfect. This is the weather that I want to go and watch an Ohio State game, especially against a team like Iowa or Michigan here down the line. But we'll get into that here at a later time. There are a couple things that I wanted to just touch with you on, and one of them came up this weekend after as I was watching the Tennessee-Alabama game and the post-game comments from Nick Saban, and that was his comment about players, not doing what they needed to do to win games, and he said something specific to, a position is not guaranteed. And it made me think of the bye week nugget that you had put up on the Ask the Insiders board last week around how Ryan Day has navigated both the reps for some of the more veteran players and, just keeping them engaged and keeping them excited about the environment and the brotherhood, given the fact that there are a lot of younger players that are stepping up and that are making a bigger impact. So wanted to just get your insight into kind of how, what you were hearing from that and what you're hearing in terms of Ryan Day's standpoint on a lot of that, NIL, transfer portal, and how he's really able to keep this unit together.
Well, to your point about the Saban comment, what people have to remember is Saban, one of Saban's big edge, and one of the reasons why they've won so many championships was that Nick Saban was really one of the first people to fully embrace ruthless roster management. And, that means, processing his roster and looking at, who are his weakest links, encouraging guys to take medical red shirts or to move on and transfer if they were not going to play at Alabama. And In past years, we would have looked at that and thought that was maybe a little uncouth or that wasn't, proper etiquette. But now we just realize it's just part of the game. And, so for Ryan Day and Mark Pantoni and the OSU staff, last week was really a time when they had a first chance to really take a look at some of the bottom third of their lineup and see who are the guys that they're going to have to process out, who are the guys that they're going to have to ask to move along, who are the guys that haven't developed the way that they want to. And part of that process was last week was really almost think of it like showtime during bowl prep, but only during a midweek time. It gives the perfect excuse to take some of the veterans, give them some roster, load management, get them some days off, and get the other guys live, the younger guys, some live reps. Because when you're playing scout team, you're not taking live reps. You're simulating somebody else's activity, whether it be an offensive set or a defensive set, or trying to give a particular look to the first team offense or first team defense. But when you go live scrimmage, those are different types of reps. And I think for Ohio State, last week was a chance for them to do that, look at who they got on the roster, and really start to make some decisions about what are their needs, what are their, what's the difference between a want and a need, and where do they need to go to the portal next year, and who are guys that they're going to ask to stay on and who they're going to ask to stay off. And it's a hard and nasty business, but that kind of part of that business was taking place last week, and rightfully so. And it doesn't make Ryan Day a big meanie or anything. It just means he wants to win. And I think we just all have to embrace the new college football in the year 2022.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And even just looking at, I saw a couple posts on Twitter of just some of the transfers that Ohio State had lost last year, and how they've been performing. And I think it's always good to see guys that that have been in a program for a long time. Have tried to stick it out, and at a certain point, yeah, you got to do what's best for you, and you got to go and take an opportunity to get on the field and really improve your stock to get to that next level. And seeing some of those guys perform, at a high level is really good to see. And I'd be curious to see kind of who falls into that category over the next year. Obviously, you never want to lose somebody, especially a guy like Kyle McCord. You want to keep the offensive line intact. Is there anybody in particular you would be kind of looking at in terms of surefire people that will most likely transfer from this point, and just kind of their availability and what they've been asked to do on this team?
Well, I think those are tough. But yeah, I hate doing that because I think it's a little unfair to
Yep.
the kids. But I mean, with the backup quarterback situation, in any position where only one person plays, it's
Yeah.
really, yeah, I think it's unfair to the kids because I look at it like a hockey goalie. You could be the greatest hockey, or I should say, the second greatest hockey goalie in the world. But if the first greatest hocky goalie in the world plays in front of you, you're never going to see the
Yeah.
ice. So for I think whoever the non-winner of the quarterback derby for next year is really got to be on portal watch. And I understand it. I mean, you want
Yeah.
to play, and Kyle's put in his time and put in there. And I think Ohio State is going to have to make some hard decisions here pretty soon. I know they desperately want to keep both those guys through the spring to have kind of a real competition. Heaven forbid you have an injury or something like that, then you really have a problem. So I think it's going to be a delicate dance, but you're weighing the needs of Ohio State versus
Hmm.
the desires of these kids to play. And I know we always use the Joe Burrow example, but if Joe Burrow hadn't transferred, he'd be selling cars in Athens, Ohio
Yeah.
right now. And instead, he's the face of the NFL and a centimillionaire. So I think sometimes you just got to get the chance to play, and who that's going to be. We don't really know yet, but those decisions are being made as we speak, and it's like I said, it's the tough part of the game, but it's a necessary one.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's I don't think anybody wants it to come to that, that point, especially the players and the coaches. And it is a largely a mutual decision in most cases, I think, to for the betterment of that player. And Joe Burrow is the prime example. Obviously, I wanted him to start that year. Just throwing that out there. I thought I'd seen him play enough in the spring games and in mop up duty that I felt like he was definitely going to be a solid quarterback. He did prove that, obviously with the injury that year, and Dwayne Haskins had a phenomenal year, and as is anyways. So you can't really say, it was a wrong decision from any part. But Joe Burrow is definitely one of those that gives you more credence to that kind of process, and how impactful it can be for somebody. But there's definitely a ton more from your original nugget, as well as the conversation that kind of has been taking place over the last week. So if you want some more detail and some more depth into this conversation, definitely go check it out on BuckeyeScoop.com. It's on the Ask the Insiders board. You will need to be a member. So if you're not a member, definitely sign up so that you can join as part of the community available there at BuckeyeScoop.com. Now, another conversation that has been really kind of top of mind, I would say, probably for the last couple weeks on the message boards, has been the Big Ten expansion, specifically as it relates to kind of the second wave here after USC and UCLA. Notre Dame being, the will they, won't they kind of conversation, for how whoever knows how long that's going to take. But the kind of next wave being Oregon and Washington. So, what are your thoughts just in terms of just that expansion? I think it makes a lot of sense, from a brand perspective. But what specifically do those two teams bring to the table as it relates to just the kind of Big Ten expansion and the media rights deal as it stands?
Well, the big thing for people that are listening is Oregon and Washington is happening. Oregon and
Mhm.
Washington are coming to the big, and it's going to come on a graduated deal where they come in and they take less money than full vested Big Ten members, and then kind of earn their way in to become a full vested Big Ten member.
Mm.
But if you think about what it gives to Ohio State, I mean, you're talking. I mean, Oregon and Washington, they're not brands like Ohio State are, but they're
Yep.
great brands. They give the Big Ten a truly national coast to coast conference. Think about these. You're talking about replacing some of these. Whether it be a Maryland game or a Rutgers game with an Ohio State Oregon game or an Ohio State Washington game. I mean, it's just going to be. As a fan, it's absolutely fabulous. From a viewing standpoint, they're doing is they're attacking the Friday night window and the late night Saturday night window
Mhm.
with these premier West Coast games. And if you think about it, the Big Ten's really, been kind of the exclusive domain of, big noon kickoff or maybe an afternoon game or, every now and then a Saturday night game being an 8 p.m. Eastern time game. Well, now you could have Big Ten football at 10:30 at night
Mhm.
Eastern time. And so you could have Big Ten football from, noon all the way till midnight, and
Yep.
it's really a fascinating concept. And what they're doing is they're really looking to the streaming companies, primarily Apple and Amazon, as bidders for these streaming services. And the Big Ten was really reluctant to make a commitment to a streaming company because they weren't sure people would actually stream it in big numbers. But when you
Mhm.
look at the numbers that Amazon's getting on Thursday Night Football with the NFL, it's taken away that concern. So I
With
think that's going to be that's the next big announcement. It's going to be Oregon, Washington to
Yep.
the big, and like I said, for me, I could not be more excited. I think it's a great move for that, and I think it's a new chapter for the Big Ten. But as a fan, wow, what a treat!
Yeah. Yeah, and I was gonna say too with Amazon, the numbers that they've been seeing on Thursday Night Football, albeit with some pretty terrible matchups the last few weeks. So I would think you get some better matchups here
No,
with
no,
that.
no, let me correct you on that. The worst,
Yeah.
those were some of the worst games that I've ever. I mean, it was like just
But they've had one
horrible,
touchdown in
horrible.
2 weeks, something like that.
Oh my, it's been so bad, and still the numbers are so good. So
Yeah.
yeah, no, the streaming's there, it's happening, and what a profound change.
Yeah, and I think too one thing that is probably, at least in my opinion, one of the biggest pieces of the new media rights deal is the changeover to CBS as well. Getting that 2:30, 3:30 window and having teams coming from the West Coast to play potentially, let's say you get a USC, Ohio State, or you get an Oregon, Michigan, or what have you. We all know it's very tough to go across the country and play an early game, play a noon game. So I think that window is really impactful for those types of games as well, and could lead to a lot of those cross country matchups coming in at that window. And then you have that late window. I don't know. Did you watch like the USC Utah game this past weekend? That was a
Oh,
late night window.
I watched every minute of that, and it was, yeah, just again, that stuff for me has always been, as a West Coast guy.
Yeah.
I love some of those premier West Coast matchups. I think people on the East Coast sometimes miss that, but under this new agreement, you're not going to miss it anymore. I mean, those are Big Ten conference games, And when Ohio State goes out to play Washington at 7:30 at night, East Coast time or whatever it is, everybody's going to be tuning in, and that's
Hmm.
it's going to be something really, really special. And I frankly can't wait to see it.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited, and I don't think they're done quite yet. I think this will be, probably the stopping point, at least for the foreseeable future. Any other names, or teams that would kind of be the next in line, you think, for continued expansion, or when do you see that kind of coming back into the mix?
Well, if you think about it from a practical matter, USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington are leaving the Pac-12. So what is left of the Pac-12? I mean,
Hmm.
it's really a carcass. Now, the one gem that as far as I'm concerned, out of that is Stanford.
Yeah.
I could see Stanford making a move. I know people are down on Cal. I'm not quite as down on Cal, but a Stanford Notre Dame pairing makes an awful lot of sense. Traditional rivals, teams that have played, both academic
Mm.
minded schools. You get those schools now. All of a sudden, you've got just about every traditional rival for Notre Dame. Short of the service academies
Yeah.
in the Big Ten, so it's going to make it a lot more palatable to their fan base and their administration to make a move like that. But Notre Dame's clearly continued to be in play. But I think the rest of the Pac-12's got to end up somewhere. You're not going to go after the Washington States. You're not going to go after the Oregon States and schools like that. Or Arizona State. But Arizona, Utah, Colorado, Stanford, Cal. I mean, they're all in play. But Oregon and Washington, first two dominoes, and that's going to set off a whole other set of dominoes throughout college football. So it's going to be a really fascinating time.
Yeah, we are slowly coming down to two major conferences, and no NCAA oversight either. So it's slowly turning into a completely different league. But I think, ultimately that lends to some of the best matchups that you'd be able to find, and leads to a lot better college football week in and week out as well. And not to mention just being able to cover the country for recruiting purposes, having much more of those larger footprints in those areas as well, specifically around that Southern Cal area, and being able to, we have been able, obviously, to make an impact. We definitely have a ton of players from the West Coast territory, but I think from a recruiting standpoint as well, definitely a big impact for Ohio State and just the Big Ten as a whole.
Yeah, no question. And I mean, Ohio State's going to be, or the Big Ten rather, is going to be the first truly national
Yep.
conference. And the clear leader. I mean, a move like this puts them so far ahead of somebody like SEC. It's going to force them to make a move, and maybe that makes them to make a move against Clemson or some of those other ACC
Hmm.
teams. Which now opens up UNC and Virginia and some of the other premier schools out of the ACC. So, we're not done yet. I think you're right. I think it's going to come down to two super conferences, and it's for college football as we know it over the next 10, 15, 20 years is going to be completely different, and everybody's got to get ready and embrace that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, like I said, there's tons of pages in conversation about this topic as well at Buckeye Scoop. So, if you are looking to get some more information and contribute to that conversation, again, be sure to check out BuckeyeScoop.com. Go to the Ask the Insiders board and search for the Big Ten expansion October update. But that is going to do it for us here today. Nevada, thank you again for jumping on and joining. It was a little bit short notice here for us to connect, but glad you're available. Always good to talk to you about it.
Thanks, my friend. Anytime.
All right, and thank you, Buckeye Nation, as always, for listening and or watching to this episode of the Morning Scoop. If you liked this episode, definitely be sure to search the Buckeye Scoop or Morning Scoop wherever you listen to podcasts. All of the Morning Scoop episodes will be available there, as well as on our YouTube channel. Just search Buckeye Scoop at youtube.com, or click on the link here below this video, and you'll be able to subscribe to stay, again, up to date with all of the most recent content as soon as it's ready. Um, as always, I am your host, Ryan McClincy. Thank you for listening, and go Buckeyes.